What is a person without their memory? Are we not just a collection of stories, those we tell and those told about us? Imagine a power so absolute it could erase every story ever told about you. In ancient Rome, this was called the condemnation of memory. This wasn't simple forgetting, it was a systematic official act of erasure. The Senate reserved this punishment for the worst traitors, tyrants, enemies of the state. It was a verdict not on a body, but on a legacy. Names were struck from history, faces chiseled from statues, legacies reduced to voids. Every coin with your likeness melted down, every inscription scraped clean. The Romans believed legacy was a form of immortality. To lose it was a second, soul-deep death, was the ultimate act of cancellation, a warning echoing through time. By erasing the wicked, Romans believed they purified their collective story. It was a message. Some crimes are so unforgivable, the only just punishment is to be utterly forgotten. The universe itself was rewritten to pretend you never existed. This was the chilling power of. But why go to such lengths? The answer lies in Rome's understanding of power and history. History was a lesson for the future, not just a record of the past. To erase the wicked was to send a warning. Tyranny would not be tolerated, not even in memory. The condemned became a void, a lesson, and a threat. The power to condemn a memory was the Senate's most extreme tool. In the chaos of Roman politics, the Senate needed a way to assert its authority, even over emperors. When a cruel emperor died, the Senate would debate deify him or erase him. Voting for wasn't just punishment, it was a warning to the next ruler: respect us or be erased. The decree was formal, legal, and organized, a state-sanctioned war on memory. The Senate became the editor of Roman history, deciding which chapters survived. But this was a dangerous game. The new emperor's interests could clash with the Senate's. Sometimes a successor wanted to distance himself from a hated predecessor. Other times, erasing the past threatened his own legitimacy. Political maneuvering followed, with the fate of a dead man's memory hanging in the balance. The Senate's ultimate veto was a check on power, but also a tool for settling old scores. The process was deeply political, shaping not just the past, but the present. The condemned's legacy became a bargaining chip in the struggle for control. In Rome, even the dead could be used to fight the living. The Senate's decision echoed through history, shaping who would be remembered and who would be lost. Roman history is filled with famous names: Augustus, Trajan, Marcus Aurelius. But what about those we were never meant to remember? The targets of were emperors whose reigns were marked by terror and excess. Nero, infamous for tyranny, was condemned after his death. Statues destroyed, his name erased, his laws abolished. The Senate tried to make it as if his reign had never happened. Domitian, paranoid and cruel, demanded to be called master and god. After his assassination, his memory was violently erased. Commodus, the gladiator emperor, was celebrated in death only by his condemnation, his legacy wiped from official history. These men sought eternal glory but found only shame and erasure. Their stories became cautionary tales, ghosts haunting the history that tried to forget them. The Senate's actions were not just about punishment but about rewriting the narrative of Rome. The condemned became symbols of what not to be. Their erasure was meant to purify the empire's story. Yet their infamy survived, whispered through the ages. The attempt to erase them only made their stories more haunting. In trying to destroy their memory, Rome ensured their ghostly presence in history. The condemned emperors became warnings, not just to their successors, but to all who would abuse power. Their absence became a powerful presence, a lesson carved into the fabric of Rome. Caligula's reign is one of Rome's most bizarre tales. Beloved at first, he soon descended into cruelty and madness. He insulted the Senate, executed on whims, and demanded worship as a god. His infamous acts, like nearly making his horse a consul, shocked Rome. After his assassination, the Senate moved swiftly to erase him. Statues shattered, his name removed from records, a surgical attempt to cut out his reign. Yet politics complicated the erasure. His successor, Claudius, owed his position to the chaos Caligula left. A full condemnation risked undermining Claudius's legitimacy. So, Caligula's memory was only partially erased, some statues destroyed, some inscriptions altered. This partial erasure reveals the limits of rewriting history. Even the most determined efforts are shaped by the politics of the present. Caligula's ghost lingered, a reminder that history resists being neatly rewritten. How did Rome erase a person from history? Once the Senate decreed, the work began across the empire. Statues and portraits were toppled, melted, or defaced, sometimes heads replaced with those of new emperors. Stonemasons chiseled names from arches, buildings, and military diplomas, leaving scars in the stone. These blank spaces were visible wounds in history. Coins bearing the condemned's face were recalled, portraits removed from homes, even personal documents altered. The goal: total oblivion. Every visual and written reminder was to be wiped away. It was a campaign of state-sanctioned vandalism, creating a historical vacuum. The erasure was both physical and symbolic, a public ritual of purification. Yet, the scars left behind often spoke louder than the names they replaced. The process revealed the power and the futility of trying to control memory. Oblivion, it turned out, was never complete. The chisel and hammer were the tools of Rome's war on memory. Picture a stonemason, high on a scaffold, carefully erasing a name from a triumphal arch. Each strike chips away at a legacy once meant to last forever. This was not mob violence, but the precise labor of craftsmen, ordered by the state. Only the condemned name was to be removed, surrounding honors left intact. The work was slow, deliberate, and symbolic. Thousands of milestones, diplomas, and inscriptions had to be amended. Sometimes a new emperor's name was carved into the blank space, a literal replacement of the old regime. The destruction was a public ritual, demonstrating the transfer of power. People saw statues come down, names vanish, eras end. The chisel and hammer became instruments of political theater. They performed a ritual of purification, promising a fresh start. Yet the scars they left behind became part of the story. The act of erasure was as much about spectacle as about forgetting. In Rome, even destruction was a performance for the ages. The tools of oblivion became tools of memory. For Romans was a fate worse than death. Death was not the end. Immortality came through reputation and remembrance. The condemned lost not just life but the hope of being remembered by descendants. Their names erased, their spirits were denied peace, cut off from family rituals. They became restless ghosts, doomed to wander in oblivion. This was a spiritual catastrophe, a second, permanent death. The threat of condemnation terrified the powerful. It meant a life's ambition reduced to a void, a lesson in failure. To be unremembered was the ultimate punishment. The condemned became warnings, their existence a scar in history. Memory was the heart of Roman identity. A person was a link in a chain from ancestors to descendants. Noble families displayed wax masks of ancestors, wore them in funeral processions, and honored the dead as part of the living family. Good emperors were deified, their memory preserved in temples and worship. This was the highest honor. Immortality through memory was the opposite, a severing of the sacred chain. The condemned were cast out, their masks destroyed, their names erased from family trees. They became orphans in time, disconnected from both past and future. For Romans, this was the death of the soul. The Senate's decree was not just political, it was spiritual annihilation. Memory made the dead present, erasure made them vanish. The condemned lost their place in the Roman story. Their absence was a warning to all who valued legacy. Did work? Ironically, no. The attempt to erase only made the condemned more fascinating. Blank spaces and headless statues became mysteries. Who was erased and why? Historians like Tacitus and Suetonius recorded the stories, ensuring the condemned survived in memory. The official erasure failed. The stories endured. History proved stubborn. Memory persisted in scars, whispers, and forbidden texts. The act of destruction became a new kind of record. The headless statue told a more powerful story than a perfect one. Today we see echoes of this impulse to erase the shameful parts of history, but Rome's lesson is clear: erasing history is a dangerous game. It creates ghosts that speak louder than silence. We cannot escape our past, we can only seek to understand it. The condemned remain